call this meeting of the Addison Central School District School Board to order at 6:01 on May 11th. We start off with introductions. Jason, go first.
Jason Chance.
Ron Mackleth.
Ann Mason.
Robin Saddle. Mary Heather Noble.
Jess Venable Novak.
Ellen Whelan Weiss. Barbara Wilson.
Steve Cash.
David McCallum. Sorry. David McCallum. Sorry.
Wendy Baker.
I forgot if you guys introduced yourselves first or whatever.
We've already messed up the easy.
Is there other administration staff that would like to introduce themselves?
Sonia Afline, Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Restorative Practices.
Natalie Colazo, Assistant Superintendent.
Courtney Cron, Director of Teaching and Learning.
Correnti, Director of Finance and Operations.
Oh no!
Caitlin Field, High School Principal.
All right, thank you. Jason, just a quick technology check. Are we all good over there?
I don't know.
I sense that might be the case.
Well, I don't know if we have audio coming out into the room. So I think Laura's going to join remotely. We'll have her tested. Let's make sure we can hear her.
Steve Orzik just jumped on, so maybe try him.
There we go.
Steve, if you could let us know if our audio is coming through to you, that would be greatly appreciated.
Hey, Steve, can you hear us?
He might be
He's
trying
not
to
muted.
talk.
He's not good.
That is not a good sign.
Him.
We are not hearing you if you're talking.
And he's not hearing us.
He's not. That's annoying. All right, how much time are we going to spend troubleshooting this?
Drew, is there something you can do
Let's give Drew 90 seconds.
with this situation?
I believe in you.
We know what we know. All right, can Steve try again?
Go, Steve. Can you hear us, Steve?
We hear him.
That was a
Someone.
Steve?
Ours is.
Hello! Yeah, that's where
I can hear you, but obviously you can't hear me.
Oh, we
No,
can.
we
can.
Now we have you.
All good.
Good work.
Thank you,
Magic
Drew.
clap.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Drew, for that. All right, well, with that, we will move on to our next agenda item. And, well, Steve, if you could introduce yourself.
Steve Orzak?
All right, and is Laura on yet?
No.
All right, we will go back to introductions once she joins. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
All right, before we vote on adopting the agenda, is there any discussion on this? All right, all those in favor of adopting the agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. All right, the motion for the agenda is adopted. The next item on our agenda is our first public comment period. I will remind everyone in the room and online that we do limit public comments to 3 minutes. If anyone would like to make a public comment, please indicate by raising your hand. We will start in the room and then we will go online. Yes.
Sure. Hi, my name's Kurt Broderson. Little context, my wife has been a teacher at MUHS for 25 years. At this point, I think she's the longest serving veteran at MUHS. My daughter was in the first 6th grade class that moved over to MUHS and is now a 10th grader. So my first comment is I think it's time to step back a little bit and evaluate the 6th grade move to MUHS. What were the problems with it? What were the successes? Because I think to cast it as a success just because they're there does not really fully grasp the story. I think there were unintended consequences, some of which are tight spaces, offices that were temporarily in the entryway to the gym, band room changes, faculty room changes, and other things that I think are deeper changes. I think there's been a move away from MUHS as a middle school. There's a banner in the gym from the early 2000s when MUHS was recognized as a model middle school. When Peter Burrows was prepping for the move, staff was staff that was moving in and changing within the district needed to be middle level endorsed because they were K through 8 can be one sort of certification. Middle school sort of bridges that, and people were coming in with high school certifications that couldn't teach sixth graders theoretically, and then there were elementary school that didn't reach the upper grades. And I think in the sort of same time frame of IB being there, I think there's been some impact on MUHS as a middle school. That was my first thought. Second, I think we've been doing IB long enough that I'd like to see a review of what the faculty, students, and community feel about it. It is a substantial investment. There is annual costs. There's a lot of focus on the DP program, which I feel serves a small number of kids. So I think it, particularly because Dr. Baker wasn't here when it was sort of pushed through and developed, doesn't really have a dog in the fight, as the metaphor might be. And just to evaluate how IB has worked for everyone. And that dovetails into my last comment. I think it's time to investigate with Addison Northwest and Mount Abe districts what a regional high school would look like here, because I think this is the logical setting for it with the Career Center. IB may be a roadblock for merging. I could see one high school, 2 middle schools located in Virgins and Bristol. Too much of the discussion and the sort of public view of it is an elementary school going to get closed? And that's taken up a lot of the sort of oxygen in the discussion. I'd like to see what could we do that would really improve and add offerings at the high school and middle school level, because as those populations shrink, MUHS in particular is kind of the middle point where it becomes too small. But now the sixth graders are there, so they reduce population at elementary schools. There's a lot of interlocking pieces there, and I think it's time to investigate those 3 things. And I would be willing to be on a community committee sort of thing in that. I taught middle school for 15 years and high school for 3. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there others in the room that would like to make a comment? Yes.
I'll feed off of that. Shoreham School, I am not, as a parent and with one kid in the school and 2 going into the school. I've been on every committee. I've been to all the meetings. I join via Zoom when I can, teaching T-ball to my kids. There is still no answers. You guys made this decision 6 months ago, and there are still a lot of unanswered questions, and this still feels super pushed down our throat. And there are a lot of people that have jumped ship, and I don't have that option because my 3 kids can't get into one of these small schools as 3. So my option is to pull them home or to do what we're doing, going to Bridport. And I just think that this preschool thing at Shoreham is also, you're trying to create something that's already in Bridport. So why are we trying to recreate it in Shoreham when it's in Bridport? Leave it there and then move our kids to Shoreham, or move everybody to Shoreham. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and that still hasn't been figured out, the preschool program, and we're in the 11th hour. School is 30 days away, and they're out. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done this summer, and I don't know if you're all ready to do that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to make a comment? All right, we will now shift online. If anyone would like to make a public comment, please indicate by raising your Zoom hand. All right, seeing any hands that I'm not seeing, Jason? All right, well, that concludes our public comment period then. And we will move on in our agenda. Before we do that, James, if you could introduce yourself.
James Clark.
All right, thank you. So the next item that we have on the agenda is approving the minutes of April 27th. Is there a motion?
I'll move that we approve the minutes of April 27th.
All right, is there any discussion before we vote on this?
I'll just note that I was notified of a couple of spelling errors, and then I caught a couple more, so I've already changed those, and then I'll notify Darcy to repost. But if there's anything else that you guys have caught, please let me know.
All right, is there any other comments on the minutes from April 27th? All right, we will go ahead and vote on this. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. All right, the minutes have been approved. Next agenda item is the approval of the ACSD bills. Jess, I will turn that over to you.
Yeah, today Jason and I looked at the bills, and I had a question or two that I was able to talk with Matt about, but I think other than that, we're good. So I can make a motion to approve the May 8th ACSD General Fund accounts payable in the amount of $574,502.68, and approve the May 1st payroll expenses in the amount of $1,064,335.47.
All right, is there any discussion regarding the motion? All right, we will vote on the question then. All those in favor of approving the bills, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. All right, the bills have been approved. The next agenda item is the report of the student representatives. I do not see either Nava or Taryn here. I don't know if you're seeing anything online, Jason. All right, I think we will move on past the report of the student representatives, and I do see Laura online. Laura, if you could unmute and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Laura Harthan.
Thank you. All right, so the next item is the report of the superintendent. Turn that over to you, Wendy.
Okay, so first.
Any chance you guys can hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah,
we can hear you.
You sound great.
Okay. Steve Orzak.
All right, thank you.
Okay, personnel appointments, resignations, and retirements. You have a list in front of you. There are none here that are surprises to us, with the exception of Kate Conklin, who's had a change in family circumstance she needs to attend to. So otherwise, those are there for you. In addition, we would like you to appoint Rocco Cece as a classroom teacher 1.0, step 11, effective 8/14/26. Some of you might remember that Rocco taught third grade at Mary Hogan last year, and then moved for a family circumstance and is coming back to take open position there. So that's a familiar face. It will be for the kids and the families as well.
Can you just repeat the details again? I have step 11 effective what date?
8/14/26.
Thank you. I'll move that we accept the personnel appointments, resignations, and retirements as presented in the minutes, and including the appointment of Rocco Cece 1.0 FTE step 11 effective August 14th, 2026.
All right, is there any further discussion? No? All right, well, we will vote on the question. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. And any abstentions?
1 abstention.
2 abstentions. All right,
More,
Yes.
there's more. Okay, so just by a point of interest, our average ACSD licensed teacher salary figure for FY27 is 82,136 approximately, and our new hires are averaging 79,600. So it's just kind of interesting, right, to see where our new hires come in versus where our existing staff is, and so I'm just presenting that to you for your information. A legislative update, there was substantial activity last week, and I think all of it was generally positive, meaning stabilizing, which is helpful. So the Ed Transformation Bill, which is H955, is being marked up in the Senate, and they appear to be headed for not going to conference committee, and actually coming together with very slight differences that are causing some questions, but not anything that's different. They are, thinking about postponing action timelines on class size minimums for schools, right, that haven't started that work, things like that are not necessarily material to the field. So it would appear that we will come out of the legislative session from the legislative bodies. It's likely we'll come out with a voluntary merger process that was articulated first in the House bill, with the idea that we will, in both the House and the Senate, discuss the possibility of merging voluntarily with any or all of Addison Northwest, Mount Abe School District, Lincoln School District, and us as a study committee. That will have to go by the voters still by November of 2028. The new districts, it looks like if nothing changes, would be expected to form, if there are any, by the 30-31 school year, with the foundation formula going into place July 1st of 2030, which is FY31. So I think the common thinking is that next session, which is a new biennium, there would be a lot of discussion and refinement around the foundation formula. And at that point, the district says they are considering whether to merge or not, would be able to have that thinking in place and that modeling in place to determine, once the foundation formula is in place, what would that mean for resources that districts had. So if you remained on your own and were somewhat smaller, would you be at a larger disadvantage with a foundation formula and possible extra district pieces, or not? So I think that's the prevailing thought, is that local communities will be able to make decisions based on new financial formulas and thinking, and that would be taking place as soon as I think it's October 2026. That work is expected to begin. So that feels like it's increasingly settling. Whether the governor will do as he suggested and not vote the state budget through, or perhaps allow this to move through with no action, or veto, or this bill alone, or whether the governor will take executive actions at his disposal is yet to be seen. But it appears that the two chambers of the legislative body are settling in together. So any questions about that at that point?
I just have not tracked this well, Wendy, in the discussion around voluntary mergers between districts. Is there any specificity that whole districts would have to merge, or is there is it not defined, or is there flexibility for things like a regional high school to be the merger, but other aspects of current districts to remain intact? I'm just wondering if there's a lot of specificity around what those mergers between districts would, if that exists currently, about what would be allowable, or if that's to be determined.
It's probably to be determined. I mean, I think that's generally expected to come out of study committees. So if they're, if once everybody starts studying the situation with real local data and information, both student data as well as financial data and capital data and so on and so forth, whatever the way forward for various communities that emerges from that, I think will be reported. And then, whether or not those things can happen will ultimately be up to the state board. But that's, I think there's a lot being put into the merger process, which is mandatory for everyone to participate in. And the CSAs, of course, are also the collaborative educational service agencies are also in place still in the Senate version. So that's a different grouping for us. There are the districts that are in Addison County, but also Champlain Valley and Mount Mansfield district in that CSA. I think with the idea that if it's bigger, if that's bigger, then we have a better chance of economies of scale with certain things. And also we are crossing geographic boundaries, so that maybe that Addison County, for example, doesn't have a particular infrastructure around something that another geographic area does. And so we're able to work with that. And same thing if there's something in Addison County that is not currently available in the other districts. So they made those a little bit larger. But I think the intent of the legislation is to force the conversation. There's a lot of accountability in the reporting, in the data, that there's real information that's put forward, and then hopefully a way forward that leads to better opportunities for students where needed, and economic efficiencies. Those will show themselves, and then that can be moved forward as a whole.
Mary Heather.
Do you have a sense of, because while this is happening, the Agency of Education is continuing its rulemaking around small by necessity, small by choice. Do you know how those two overlap? Or do you have a sense of how that is coming along?
Yeah, I expect that the state board will get the rulemaking for that. That's authorized in this bill before the study committees. But those parameters seem to be fairly also settled in terms of students not having more than a 45-minute bus route, schools not being more than, I think it's 10 miles roughly, away from each other, things of that nature. I think that all seems to be fairly settled in terms of the criteria that I've provided to you in a couple of I think former updates. That's not changing, and it doesn't seem controversial. So the rulemaking will just put parameters in there around when and how do those pieces now become enforced. So, for example, will superintendents, as part of the district quality standards, need to report, if they have any schools that are within those descriptors and where that is, and then what is the secretary's action that she may or may not need to take accordingly. That all of those things are the pieces that will go into rulemaking around that, and my guess is that will start if not this summer, it will probably begin in the fall and probably not be a long process. Any other questions about that?
What does that last part? Sorry. What does that last part mean? What do you mean what won't be a long process?
The rulemaking, I don't think will be a long process. I think the Agency of Ed will propose rules around that, and there'll probably be not a lot of discussion about it, or a lot of discussion that's consequential, and so then they will go about the process of moving that forward. There is a 3-year process of meeting class size requirements So it could be that they also put some sort of a 3-year process in place of notifying a district that you have schools under this circumstance, that the agency that is aware of that, and you need to submit a plan for managing that, something like that. So I don't think there'll be a long rulemaking process around it.
Okay.
So the bill that is probably more in flux right now is the yield bill. So the yield bill, and let me know, Matt, if I don't say the right thing or if there's something else I forget here. The yield bill is traditionally, it just says the yield, which just says how far a tax dollar goes, essentially. I may have oversimplified that. But this year, of course, it also is acting as a bit of a spending containment bill. So right now, the main point of contention is that the House has allocated half of the surplus to the buy down of taxes, and the Senate has argued that all of that should be in the buy down of taxes. And so that needs to be worked out in conference committee to determine what will actually happen. The spending threshold moves from 118% of average weighted per pupil spending in the state, okay? And it moves it from 118 to 112%. There's some discussion about people not feeling like that's too much of a jump in a single year down. For us, that in and of itself, we were okay, as are all of the Addison County districts, in terms of the modeling that the Joint Fiscal Office has done about what happens regarding that. I think we have $12,000 that is over and above what we should have to be held harmless in that circumstance. However, that doesn't address some of the issues like capital construction and what that needs. There is also a difference in H955s in the Senate and House version, where the House has exempted all debt before 2024 that's capital debt. The Senate's version is saying no, let's not do that. And then the yield bill is considering holding all capital debt harmless from the spending threshold. So how all that ends up working out in the end is probably the most consequential discussion, I would say, left in the State House right now, and that's scheduled to go to conference committee. Is there anything I've forgotten about that, Matt?
No, just that there was some serious conversation about adding an intermediate step between 118 and 112. I've heard 114 and 116 thrown around.
Right. Yeah.
But with the full hold harmless on the capital.
So we'll see. There's some negotiation about those two versions to be had. Otherwise, moving on to legislative things. There are significant changes to Medicaid, how Medicaid revenue is calculated that are coming, which is, it feels like largely an administrative change. However, I'm not sure, given the reluctance on the part of the federal government to continue to send as many Medicaid dollars out as they have been, exactly what that will look like. We're involved in discussions about how that administrative change looks. The Agency of Human Services will begin to be implementing that instead of the Agency of Education. There'll be randomized checks as to randomized time studies, and there's a whole new electronic system that our nurses and anyone else that is doing work that is eligible for Medicaid funds will have to interface with. We don't know the degree to which that will work well coming out of the gate. So that will be substantial work that we will be taking on as a district to make that change. we hope that it doesn't make for a substantial disruption in revenue, and no one has said that it will. Is that true? Yeah. However, we're just going to remain to be seen there. Chronic absenteeism, that bill essentially has the rest of the state do largely what we have already put in place across Addison County, so they're not big changes for us. It will mean changes in all of our school handbooks that really spell out exactly what's excused or not excused, but in reality, it's what we really already do, so it shouldn't. This year was the big change in terms of family vacations not, being excused and things of that nature. I don't think families will feel significant change. I do want to, give a shout out to Senator Hardy, who worked with a number of superintendents, myself included, who were concerned about some of the changes that were made to the homeschooling provisions in 2023 when the Agency of Ed was overwhelmed, that led to a little bit of a relaxation in oversight, so that superintendents are no longer aware when homeschooling applications are submitted to the Agency of Ed, and there's not a check to determine, are there any DCF intakes or, things that may present a child welfare concern. And that's a departure from how it used to be. And so there was a real request on the part of superintendents to add language to try to reinstate some of those pieces without being overly burdensome. And Senator Hardy provided a great deal of assistance in that process. That amendment was voted down by the Senate in favor of taking more testimony directly on the issue, because home study families were not in favor of that. They were concerned it would be overly restricting parental rights. But I imagine that will come up again in the next session. I think everybody in the Senate, indicated publicly that it's an important question, and so we'll continue that conversation in the Senate next time. Otherwise, that bill does not have real implications for us. We're already ahead of that. We are also ahead of the bill that talks about immigration protocols, S227. Essentially, all of that is what you saw us all collectively put in place, in January, as we were realizing that there was a need to focus specifically in those areas. So the F4 procedures for visitor management and access control that you have seen and that we've discussed cover all the aspects that are already in that bill. We do that. That is our process in that way. So that will not produce additional change for us. The PCBs are very important to some across the state. This is not, as I understand it, been a big topic of conversation here. But the difference between the House version and the Senate version is that the House version removes the need for testing. The Senate version puts it back in, and yet there is no funding to help in the remediation of that. So that, I think, that is stalled in Senate Finance right now, and I'm unsure as to how that's going to end. But there's a lot of concern about that given the cost and the lack of capital reserve funding. I think that's probably the majority of it. Any questions about legislative things?
I just want to say thanks for that. That was a lot. I remember when you were applying for this job and you said that you had an interest in keeping us involved in legislative stuff. And you've done that really well, so I appreciate that. But I do have one question with the PCB thing. So what does that mean? That means that even in the Senate version, which is the one that involves testing, should we test and find that PCBs, then there's no assistance to do anything about it.
Correct. They've removed the financial assistance from the state already, and
that was relative. That must have been recent. That removal,
yes.
right?
Yes.
like last year, we had it.
Yeah, maybe the year before, but yes, not that long ago in the scope of
Okay.
everything.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Yes, and I mean, these.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
I don't remember hearing about the removal of it. I must have missed it, I'm sure, but that's a big difference.
There are schools in the state, like North Country Union
Mhm.
High School is one of them, that have tremendous, financial costs that relate to the PCBs. I mean, Burlington High School you saw was completely rebuilt. So it is, I think Peter Conlon referred to it as the mother of all unfunded mandates, publicly. So there's some discussion about really, if we're going to mandate this, and we know this is costly, not having resources to help, schools to remediate that also doesn't seem right, but that's in discussion right now. Yeah. Okay, so moving on, if we're good, and I'm not sure I was as interested in being involved as I had to be. I think
Fun times.
There's a difference between interested and
Invested, yeah.
held hostage,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yes, I've appreciated the board's partnership and the community's interests really across Addison Central in ensuring that we are understanding what's taking place so that we can, always be advocating for kids in good ways, and so I've appreciated that. So moving on, we have a C30 report. So I sent out to everyone in the spotlight just a link to some discussion points around C30, which for people for whom this isn't lingo, that's every day. That is our policy that used to formally cover school attendance zones only, like where were you assigned to go to school, and now it also has the parameters around school district transfers. So that if you live in a community, you can actually ask to attend school in a different ACSD community. And the policy committee spent an inordinate amount of time and energy to ensure that this was done well. And what I would say is that in our first year of implementation, we appreciated those policy efforts regularly. The policy, generally speaking, was written well. It gave us the guidance that we needed, and it also, I checked in with the policy committee about 2 items to make sure that we were properly guided by the intent of the policy, which sometimes if the words can be read a couple different ways, you want to make sure that's the case, because that's what's important to operations, that we have that guidance. One of them was, is it okay to be accepting late applications, that really were not related to someone trying to move outside the window, but really was related to, oh wait, I didn't understand the window, or I just got a little bit late, or that kind of thing. And our assumption was that the intention was that yes, that was okay, and it was spoken about in a couple of areas, so that was fine. And the other piece was that we asked about was new residents, people that were coming into the district but had not been here during the window. And so it was our guess that it was the intent of the policy to allow people who are moving into the district to also have that same thing, to avoid putting a child into a situation where they start in school A because that's where they need to be, and then the parent requests that they're in school B for the next year, rather than go put a child through that, allowing people who are new to the district to be able to think this through. And the policy committee agreed that also was in line with the intent of the policy. So if we didn't get that right, then that would be a shift that we would want to make intentionally for next year. So those are the only pieces that were particularly important. Demographic information we were able to get for 31 of the 33 students, just to the board's request around equity data, and who are we serving in this policy? Is there a difference? And mostly the profile of students and families that requested to take advantage of this is similar to the district profile as a whole. So they're You know, there was not necessarily, you know, a big difference. Our socioeconomic indicators were similar to our profile as a whole, approximately 51%, you know, students that we had information for. We didn't have information for every student because some of those students we have not interfaced with in any way. So this, I mean, after a number of years, right, this data will get stronger in terms of its ability to give us a sense of direction. So we also, you know, students that were that are living with disabilities, there were times when those IEP teams needed to make those decisions, and other times when a request did not interface at all with the student's IEP, and therefore, you know, they went through the process just as their peers that are not living with disabilities did. So that was fine. Transportation, I know, was something that the board discussed a lot, and you know, this is still a nut I'm not sure we've cracked well. We offered placement blind to transportation on purpose, so that way people didn't feel that if they said, well, I would need transportation, that somehow that would impact their ability to utilize the policy. And we asked people in the communication that we sent home, if you need transportation, if that would be an assistance for you, then please let us know so that we can talk about that. And we only had one family say, well, a little bit of afternoon help would be great if it's convenient. It's not a barrier, but if it's convenient, that would be useful. And then there was one family in the feedback that we got back from families that said that it was a barrier, though that wasn't raised in conversation. And so, you know, people aren't always comfortable raising the barriers they have in conversation, and we need to be sensitive to that. And so I think we're just going to try to see if we can't find another way through that, so that way we can ensure that if there are families that would like to talk about that there are ways to talk about that. And so we'll be brainstorming about that in order to improve that part of the process. I thought it was very interesting from the family feedback that the number one reason that placements were declined, and you know, of the 31 families or 33 students, 26 applications, 17 of the placements for students were approved and accepted. 10 of them were approved but declined by the family, and 6 of them were waitlisted either because of the result of a lottery in 2 classrooms or because there wasn't space in the classroom they asked for in the first place. Of the families where placements had been declined, the number one reason was that their child just decided they wanted to stay in the school they were in, which I thought was interesting, you know, in that process. And I think it came back in the feedback that one family regretted that the process took as long as it did because it meant that their child became ambivalent about the process, although I'm not sure I see that as a bad thing. You know, moving a school is a big decision, and so, you know, the more it's really well thought out, I think, you know, usually results in good things for kids. So there's some overview information for you. I think this was very well received by our parent community as an option. And I think you know, we've seen some strengths of the process we have and some areas where we can tweak. So I'm not sure if you have any questions based on what you've seen or heard, but happy to take some.
Jason, those folks who are on the wait list, if a spot frees up, will they be offered one of the free spots? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would have a conversation with them about whether they would want to begin that this year or whether they might want to begin that in the following year. You know, assuming that those slots are still there and okay, only because depending upon when that happens, if it's, for example, a classroom that currently doesn't have any availability and someone moves in January, might not be the best time to move a child, and so we would want to work with a family around that. But I think the idea is you expressed a desire to be in a certain place, and we're going to honor that to the best ability we can.
I think you've sent this to us in the past, Wendy, so forgive me for asking again, but I'm curious if you have a sense, or you can remember even approximately how many of the kiddos who are moving are coming into kindergarten versus already, like you're describing, at an existing school, and it would mean a switch. Because it's truly just curiosity, but I wonder if it's a policy that will have uptake more and more as parents are deciding where to send their first kid to school initially, or their kid to school initially.
Yeah.
Versus do we change communities mid-elementary school tenure?
Yeah, I think there is a heavy kindergarten component. I don't think I put that number in there, and I would hate to say it off the top of my head because I probably won't say the right one. And I do think there probably will be an uptick in kindergarten parents as we move down the road and people become more aware of this. One interesting story is that as the kindergarten registration has taken place, Salisbury has 11 kindergartners, and they're all girls. And in fact, there used to be 2 boys, and not at the same time. But that was like, well, maybe we need to do something different, right, on the part of parents. So, I mean, it's, I think, and maybe that's just right? So I think there will be some of those pieces, as people begin to kind of understand what they'd like to do and where to go from here. Yeah.
Amy.
This is a really helpful report. I remember there was the way that we created the slots was to take the max number and then subtract 3 or whatever that was. So that means that there is still a buffer in grades, right? That didn't change after the moving around.
Correct.
So I'm wondering if that feels like the right calculation or the right math to you after going through this process, or if in the future we think about revising that.
So that math will be done in collaboration with building principals, and I think we don't know enough yet. I mean, in the summer, people move in and whatnot. So we left the buffer of 3 per class section to ensure that anyone that moved in would not be a problem. So I think once we sort of see that full cycle, and then we in the fall, if this timing remains the same, the building principals, at the K-5 level, and I will create the recommendation again and come to you to approve that recommendation. And if it feels like we don't need as much of a buffer, then we certainly, can recommend that at that point, once we've got a full year's information to work with.
Yeah, Helen.
And forgive me for not remembering from the policy, but so understanding that there were situations, and Abby spoke to this too, where some there might have been room in one grade for one sibling, but not all the other grades in the same school for all the siblings, and that might have impacted certain decisions that parents made either in this process or even applying. Can you remind me, Wendy, if I have a kid who's starting in kindergarten, I live in Cornwall, but I've gotten through this C30 policy, my kid's going to Mary Hogan, and I have a 3-year-old. Is my 3-year-old presumed to also have an option at Mary Hogan, or am I back to square one of applying for that kid in a couple of years to go to the same school?
I would say you're on square 2, in that you will have to apply, but your application is considered only with others that would have siblings. So, for example, if you at that point had a second grader and a kindergartner, if there was only one slot in the kindergarten and you were the only one that wanted that slot, then that slot would go to you.
Okay.
if there was one slot and two families who had a second grader and a kindergartner, then you would be in a lottery for the slot, but you would only be in the lottery with the other family, not with anyone else. So preferential treatment is given to families and also, to residents who wish to return. So, we had some circumstances where, since Salisbury is Ripton's assigned school, if somebody had asked to go somewhere else other than Salisbury, but yet wanted to return to Salisbury, they were given a preference as opposed to being lumped in with others who may have wanted that same classroom. So those are two preferences that are called out in the policy that we operationalized. So happy to continue to take feedback, as time moves along. I'm just super proud of the team for coming together and figuring these things out. I mean, initially the thought was that Nellie would oversee this work, and the reality was it was really complicated and very, we had to really work to stay close to what the policy committee was able to articulate, but also its intent that was really in the rooms of those discussions. And so I kept that because I had been with the policy committee during that time to try to ensure its aligned pieces as much as we could. And Darcy did a tremendous amount of work. I mean, she was the voice on the other end of the phone and on the other end of the email, and so I really want to credit her. Matt developed our lottery system with a spreadsheet. Emily, on very short notice, came up with the whole application process and pop-up menus and drop-downs and things of that nature, and the feedback form to families. So it was very much a team effort to be able to pull that off. If you remember right, it was a short timeline, right, for us between when those slots were approved and when we put everything out. And but it was done, and we look forward to feedback for next year, which may still come from lots of angles. Okay. So other things on the superintendent's report. I just want to be sure, and Jamie, you may have to help me with this one, to highlight something that I forgot to put in the spotlight, but I will put in the spotlight next time. But I just want to make sure that the public is aware that Mary Hogan and Jen Kravitz were honored at the Public Service Leadership Awards ceremony that Middlebury College had last week. And I believe the award that they received is in the name of Tiffany Sargent, right, who actually is a Ripton resident in our district and started the Community Engagement Center and retired last year. And so I had the privilege of sitting next to her at this event, and she was very pleased. The nature of why Mary Hogan was awarded really relates to what sounded to me, quick math to me, probably about 5 years, which is, right around Jen Kravitz's tenure as the principal, of consistent engagement with the college in many different formats in order to really improve the experience and programming for kids at Mary Hogan. And I was very impressed by the variety of ways in which that had happened, from growing things to football player mentorships and many others, and it was well deserved. Jen's leadership was called out specifically, as was deserved, and the staff at Mary Hogan that had really come together to participate in that were spoken of very, very highly, and so I don't know if Jamie, you want to add anything else, since you were also in attendance there. But
no, it's a really big honor. That office does really cool work of connecting the college to the broader community. It's one of those things. I think they've always struggled because Mary Hogan's right there, right? Like, tons of college students are subs or after school helpers or babysitters or picker-uppers for kids, and some of the other schools don't enjoy that benefit. And I think, now that, or someone asked me about the thing, and they were like, is there a way to help promote more of that in other schools? And I think the answer is probably yes, but it's like, how? You know, now that there's been this recognition, it might be a good open door to talking about that. Because as someone who interfaces with students there's a lot of actually appetite for students to work with little kids in all kinds of ways, athletes and sort of special houses. And but I think they easily default to that just because it's so close. And I think, you know, spreading that out is really another step in that. Because a lot of schools do things that are not of the same caliber, but are the kinds of things that would win an award for that kind of thing in a way. So I'm not trying to, I think it's really special that Jen and that school was awarded, and I think broadening that engagement would be really great, really important.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure to bring that to the board's attention. Yep. That concludes the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you for that. Next on the agenda is a report of the board chair. The beginning of the board chair report focuses primarily on the board retreat, and I definitely encourage other veteran board members to jump into this conversation as we work our way down through it, specifically regarding the DQS. So what we do know about the board retreat is it is planned for May 28th, 6 to 9 p.m. I don't believe we have nailed down a location quite yet. So once we get that information, we will share it. We do recognize that some folks won't be able to make that day, but that was, according to the survey, the day that worked the best for everyone across the board. So sorry if there are scheduling challenges with that date. So that is what we know. If you look in your board materials on page 13 of that PDF, those are the board goals from 2025 2026. Those came from last year's board retreat, and the hope is that we can do that process once again and come up with board goals for 26-27 this year. I don't know if there are other board members that want to share thoughts on how that process went, anything you would encourage people to do to prepare for that process.
Yeah, so one of the things, and it seems like so long ago that we did this, doesn't it? We had kind of an assessment of where we thought we were in advance of that, right? So that we could then, really focus where we needed to have growth based on how well we are meeting the requirements that we have to meet. So I know the state required us to do an assessment of where we felt we were. I'm wondering if some of that data could be used to help kind of ground us on, I mean, it's a little old, but it's not that old. It was last fall, I think, that we had to submit that, wasn't it?
It was, but we have information coming on that. So we have plans to
cool.
to operationalize the form that we put together to take a look at that. So
cool.
Yes, we're hoping to replicate that.
Okay.
And so Roman numeral 3, that homework on the DQS evaluation, we will be doing that process again this year. And what folks can expect in the coming days is a Google link, and then there will be a form that everyone can access. If everyone can fill that out before May 18th, that's when we're going to put all of that information together to start to prepare for that board retreat, and that will be a replication of the DQS work from last year. If you look in that PDF, the district quality standards are referenced on page 14 through 42. And specifically, I found it very helpful last year on page 28. There is a rubric that can help guide folks as you are completing that work. Otherwise, it can feel a bit daunting to try to find out how to position yourself around those DQS standards.
And you have in your packet all of the DQS standards in
Right.
addition to just to governance, which is really a reminder of what it is that we are all working from. The leadership team in the district office will go ahead and complete their assessment of each of the areas for which they have responsibility, and we will compile that so that at the retreat we'll be able to share with you what we believe, where we believe we are in those pieces, in case something hits you as a surprise or different, or you'd like an explanation. And then, once you've completed your ranking of the governance standard, then we'll be ready for whatever it is that the AOE is going to ask us to report, on behalf of the district. This is supposed to be the first year in which that report is our baseline. Last year we submitted a report, but that was supposed to be kind of a beta across the district. You weren't held responsible for it. It was really interact with the tool, see what it looks like. They took feedback, and a few of the rubrics have been revised a little bit. So this year is supposed to be the first year in which we actually submit a rating that's associated with, oh, here's where you are. So we will do the rest of that and present it to you.
Jess, and then Mary Heather, and then that one.
I was just gonna ask, you submit ours and the office, district office?
They're all together on the same
On
sheet,
one.
one
Okay.
Qualtrics form, and I have to fill in the boxes. And so the idea is that, the board is aware or on some version approving of what it is. It's not really clear. So I thought if we just at least say, here's where we think we are on the things that are operational by nature, and you can talk about that in case there's something that I don't think any of it would be a surprise to you. And then we'll take yours and we'll be ready to submit whenever they push that out, which could be after the board is not meeting for the summer any longer.
Mary Heather.
I was just gonna sort of clarify and make sure everybody understands. So the homework that Steve is referring to for all of us board members really focuses on completing a self-evaluation against the DQS standards for board governance. So only the portion of DQS that relates to our work. And that starts on in the DQS attachment, the really lengthy one, it starts on page 28. You can see the rubric, and it continues until the end of the document. But that's where you're going to want to start when you're looking at the sort of self-evaluation form. There is at the very end of the board materials the sort of paper version of the self-evaluation form. Steve or someone from the executive committee will send a link to an actual Google form so you can do it online. And it's pretty self-explanatory, but that'll be the data gathering that we're using to both inform the board goals and to report to the state. But just want to make sure that you're not totally overwhelmed by all the DQS stuff prior to page 28. Just hoping to make that clear.
Yeah, we'll go down to Ellen, then we'll get you in.
I don't want to derail us, but I am struggling to remember what the point of the district quality standards is in regards to board governance. And what I mean specifically is, what are the problems that the Agency of Education is trying to solve for? So not asking anyone, certainly not Wendy, to answer for the AOE, but just like, are there boards out there that are running wild, and this is meant to, like, I don't know, I'm feeling fatigued by and I appreciate how we're doing this and that this isn't like an arbitrary thing that we're forcing on ourselves, but I do struggle to understand why this is a requirement that is so very many pages long. And also, I'm curious, and I would just throw this out there, if we can set goals that are independent of the AOE to some degree, like if we can talk about as a district our own goals that aren't just tied to the bureaucratic definitions of quality standards that we're now routinely self-evaluating against. So this is more of a rant than a question, I apologize, but it is just like, why are we doing this again?
And I would say, yes, I certainly hear you. Also keep in mind the strategic plan and a lot of the work that exists within that. And I think we should also keep our eye on that ball at the same time.
Right, like a document that we're meant to hold ourselves accountable to.
Yeah, and I mean, we discussed it at last meeting, how we are progressing in that work as well. And so I would think we need to balance both at the same time, which tips the scale one way for one person, may not tip the scale for another person. So, and
first, just to clarify, these last pages, like page 43 onward, are the form we're gonna get.
But you will get it in a Google link.
But that's what it's gonna look like. Okay, and then as a new board member, should I be filling this out based on the 3 board meetings I've attended, or based on like my understanding of the board as a community member over the past year, plus the 3 board member meetings I've attended? I'm just not sure how I should be, and other new members should be filling it out.
Yeah, I would encourage you to take a look at it, that rubric.
Yeah. But like can I be filling that out, evaluating based on my thinking as a community member up until a month ago? Or should I focus on my experience as a board member when I think about it? Or does it not matter?
I would recommend focusing on a board member perspective, but if there's spaces that you don't have that perspective, I don't think it's wrong to bring some of that other experience into it, is what I would say. I don't know if others feel differently.
I think my question's next to that, because you hit the first half of my question, but it also talks about specific, like measurable pieces attached to these. Are there measures that we could be looking at as new board members to help inform how we're doing on this?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, Barb.
Yeah, so, and I didn't really make myself clear before. We actually filled out a questionnaire last fall that provided input for Wendy, and I'm wondering if sharing that with folks where we thought we were, because, not redo that, but to let people know, this is what the board felt at that time. It might be useful, for folks. Because obviously 3 meetings or 3 months isn't very long, and depending on how much you had been involved, it might be really hard. So I'm wondering if we shared that, the part for the board, quality standards that we filled out last, this is what this board felt at this time.
Yeah, I think we can do that for sure.
Yeah, it might be helpful. And that was what I had meant to articulate, which I didn't do very well. As opposed, because obviously there's a new snapshot, but we did this not only, 6 months ago, 7 months ago, we filled this out.
Also, it might be important, not that I'm defending bureaucratic processes in any way, but it might be important to note that the Vermont School Boards Association actually was instrumental in creating the rubrics and the governance standard and its language. And I believe its purpose in its creation was to provide boards with a tool that can help guide them in the very conversations that you have. For example, talking about the difference between governance and operations, right? How do we sort that out? I mean, that's kind of a constant language for us that we use together, but not all boards do across the state. And I think that matches the expectations in statute, but I think this is in part a communication tool to enable some of those conversations to take place. That was developed, by the Vermont School Boards Association as a whole. So if Suzanne Buck were here, she would talk about how she participated in some of that work, and so maybe that makes it a little better.
Mary Heather.
Yeah, I'll just follow up with, I think similarly to how our district as a whole is working with each of our schools to sort of bring everybody to the same kind of common understanding and shared language about, you know, what we want our classrooms to look like and the education we want to deliver to our kids. This is kind of the same idea, but for boards in Vermont, so that a board in Burlington and a board here and a board down in Bennington each have kind of the same understanding about what their responsibilities are to the students in their district and what the best practices are for overseeing the superintendent's work and engaging the community and all the things that we do. So I think it really is a worthwhile effort to raise the level of sort of professionalism on boards in our state.
Jason?
And the end result of this might be that we collect data and we evaluate ourselves and say, like, look, we're actually doing okay on the board governance side. We're going to focus our attention elsewhere in the coming year, and that's okay too. Or maybe we do a little bit of both. Maybe we just pick one thing on the board governance side to focus on, improve, and take that on for the year, and do something else, strategic plan related, or facilities related, or something else.
Yeah, Barb?
Yeah, and I'd like to remind us that some of the work that we've done very well is a result of looking at this a couple of years ago. The fact that we have, equity-based budgeting came from this, right? And so, obviously there's bureaucracy there, but there's some good there too. And I think it's our job is to really sort through it and pull the nuggets out and make sure we're focusing in the right places. But I dare say, I'd really challenge us that any goal that we come up with, whether it be around the strategic plan, I bet you could find it in there. That's been my experience, and I spent a lot of time on it, right, over the last couple of years, trying to understand these.
There's an appendix to that story in H 955. There is a directive for the Agency of Ed to provide professional development to boards regarding intra-district budgeting. That's the term, which is essentially equity-based budgeting that we've already done. The intent of that is to take a look at what are the needs, student needs in schools, and how are we attending to those, which is part now of what we do. It's not just everybody gets the same percentage of a guidance counselor. It's all right, what are the needs, what are the recommendations, so that those pieces are pulled through. So you got there because of the governance standard and your choice to focus on that. Now that so many other districts maybe they're not so sure that they've gotten there. Now it's in the legislation that the Agency of Ed will be providing that kind of training, which you already do. So maybe it will get you out of a little bit of training. Yeah.
All right, is there further questions, comments? All right, so expect two things in your email. One is a link to that Google form, and then we will look into that fall questionnaire, Barb, that you raised and try and get that sent out to folks.
Yeah, prior to maybe folks doing the, and I guess if folks haven't had an opportunity to observe something, what do we want to recommend? How then they would approach the questions. I think that's a legitimate concern because folks care about the impact they have and filling it out. So I think that is worth us spending some time about giving new folks guidelines on, well, if you just haven't observed this, how do you handle it? Do you just leave it blank and not try to assess something?
Do we have any precedent in this area at all? I don't recall any. Yeah.
Can't our own Google form allow for that? I mean, we're making the Google form, right? So can't there just be an option of NA or like not enough experience to say? And then that's probably going to be a handful of folks, and that's what we submit.
Yeah, if folks want to make that change, I think we could make that happen.
I think that would be.
Yeah, that can definitely be done.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, any other discussion on this? All right, and I encourage folks who have questions, reach out to other board members and, yeah, feel free to ask. There's a lot in the DQS. It's a lot to read through and try to get your mind around. All right, so before we get into the learning walk, real briefly, the May meeting, we are also going to have a Monday, June 1st meeting at 6 p.m. That is a bit of a departure from our usual schedule. That is due to the holiday and then also the board retreat. So we should get that. Yeah.
I just want to highlight that it's still in everyone's calendars for the for Memorial Day.
All right.
As of early this evening.
That'll change.
But I don't want to confuse.
Thank you for that.
So no Memorial Day, but yes, June 1st.
June 1st.
So in June we'll have 3 meetings. Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Cool. Yep. All right. Well, next we will debrief on the MUHS Learning Walk. Caitlin, I know you were there, and I encourage you to be a part of the conversation. Courtney, I think you were also on the Learning Walk. I was not there, and so if there's other board members who want to share perspective, thoughts, I'm certainly interested in hearing. Jason?
I'm sorry, I think we had 5 board members on April 30th visit the high school for 2 hours. Included a quick tour of the building, and then we each got to sit in on 3 classrooms. There were 2 groups, and so groups split up, and each group got to visit 3 classrooms for 15 to 20-ish minutes. Just get a little snippet of the day in the life of teachers and students and what they're working on and stuff. So it was great, and then we had a little sort of debrief all together, and then we got to sit down and have lunch with students in the commons. I would say, like, my reaction is that we've got like a huge diversity of students and teachers doing amazing work, and like, you know, reaching students where they're at. I walked into, we were part of this TOK class, which was just insane. And I'm sorry, I forget her name. Who's the teacher?
Hey, Carol.
Yes, Mrs. Carol. I read this blurb from Plato's Cave, which you know, describes this scene in this cave of, you know, shadows and light coming in, and then she was like, "All right, go ahead and draw it." And like, there was, I don't know, 20 kids in this classroom, mostly juniors, and I just was like, "All right, let's do it." And they're like drawing Plato's Cave, and then like she was explaining to us that it's, you know, it's a metaphor that she uses for you know, technology and you know, how people are in their own little echo chambers of that, and that's like the journey that she's taking them on in the TOK class. And it's just like, wow, fantastic. So,
TOK stands for Theory of Knowledge.
Theory of Knowledge. So I love it. I would encourage anyone, if you get the opportunity to do a school visit, do it. You get to see all kinds of fun stuff.
In that TOK, a particular reflection that I think is important for the board to understand is that is solely designed initially for a DP program, right? And that, which is similar to AP classes, right? For those that are wondering what all the APs are and the other letters that precede them. So DP is diploma program, so 11th and 12th graders that want a very specific series of classes that leads to a certification from the International Baccalaureate that they've reached a certain level. So that is a part of that the high school's implementation has made a graduation requirement for all students. So there's TOK Core, right, Caitlin? It's called TOK Core, which is for students who are not necessarily in the diploma program. And it makes that level of thought and learning accessible. So it is a place where, you know, our connection with the diploma program has impacted sort of the rigor that all students are able to talk about. And I don't know, Caitlin, you could say much more about that than I can, but wanted to make sure that point was raised, because as I've been here, it's always been something that I found to be very impressive about our particular type of implementation of IB. It's politics notwithstanding. And when I first went to the IB conference, when I was transitioning in, we were really heralded as a district that of preference in the way we went about that. And so as I've come to understand more about that, I just really appreciate what our staff has done and the way that Caitlin's led the high school in that regard. You know, it's we're really offering some very, very wonderful offerings for kids that I've not seen exist in other places. I don't know, Caitlin, if there's something else to add to that particularly, but.
I love the TOK course. The premise of the course is how do we know what we know? And students study areas of knowledge and ways of knowing. And as Wendy was saying, it is a full credit of TOK as part of the full diploma program. We only require our students to take a half credit, all of our students to take a half credit. But the inspiration behind that was that when I was in grad school studying, my area of focus on my dissertation was how do we support students in grappling with complex systems, in understanding complexity in the world around them. And in my interview process, one of the people I was interviewing said, there was this class I took in high school.
Oh.
And he told me about TOK. And then I landed here and we were implementing IB, and I went to Bill Lawson and I said, we gotta look at this TOK class. And so I just think it's a little bit mind-blowing the way that we invite our students to think. And you know, the TOK is one really spectacular example of that, but we didn't have a chance to go into any of the art classrooms because they just weren't teaching second block. But if you wander through an art classroom where they're teaching DP art now and look at the questions that the students are asking about art and then answering through their own artwork. I said to Joe Shine, one of our art teachers, I've never been asked to think that way about art before. And he said, neither have I. It's really fun the way we invite our kids to explore knowledge.
I see Steve Orsz's hand.
Hey, I was one of the people that participated, and a couple of things that people haven't mentioned yet was, first of all, it was really cool to watch students learning about the French Revolution in French class. So being a social studies person, that was awesome. But it struck me that the students and the teachers that were in the rooms that we were in, A, weren't intimidated by us, B, were willing to invite us into the learning process rather than as observers. And the other thing that I really liked about it was that it was so authentic. And I have been one of those people that says, yeah, having presentations for the board done by students or teachers is a wonderful thing, but this is the stuff that really makes a difference for me. I mean, if you really want to see students in their natural environment, go on one of these learning walks. I think you get so much more out of it than having the kids present to the board in some way. So I would encourage people, if you have the opportunity to do it, to participate, because it was really great. And I also wanted to say thank you so much to all the people that participated, because I know that Caitlin and Wendy and all the other people that were guiding us around carved out a very large block of their time on that day to shepherd us around the school, to the teachers that invited us into the room to participate in their class, and to the students. So I just was very appreciative of how much the school bought into doing this with us. So thank you, Wendy, thank you, Caitlin, and thank you everybody else that allowed us to see the school this way.
Barb and then Ron.
Yep, and I also went on the walk, and every time that I have the opportunity to get into one of our learning spaces, it always feels so good, right? And you know what I kind of walked away with was this feeling of how much engagement there was in the classes that we participated in, which was really awesome. And even when there wasn't students involved, you know, listening to the teacher that oversees the maker session was just awesome, and his approach, and I just couldn't imagine, you know, how wonderful it would have been when I was in high school to be able to take something like that and build your confidence, that kind of thing. And even having lunch, you know, I happened to sit next to this gal and we had a wonderful conversation. She's going off, she's going to become an elementary school teacher, and it was just a delightful conversation. So thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, just echo what what's already been said. Quick correction to Steve, maybe even cooler than that. They were actually talking about the Haitian Revolution in French class. It's even better. Yeah, I was really delighted also that the teachers who teach in the alternative programs are also part of the they also teach the wider student population. I didn't realize that, and I think that's a really great message. And I know some of those teachers do amazing work, and I'm glad that kind of our best teachers are working with all students. That really made me happy. And I like that the school feels like an organic space where there's like room for bottom-up stuff too. Like there was art, like there was some guerrilla art thing going on that I didn't quite understand, but I was very into it. So thank you for putting that together. That was really nice.
I can add too, because I was another board member. I agree with all that's been said. I think the other piece is I really enjoyed the openness and the willingness of all of the students to share their experiences with us. And I'm sure the students at lunch were probably handpicked because they're a little more loquacious, but even in the classrooms, the students were willing to answer questions and get excited and share what they were doing, which I thought was wonderful. So really appreciate it, and also highly recommend for anybody to take advantage.
And I can say, you know, I have not gotten to the bigger buildings as often as I've been in the smaller buildings, just based on the things that have gone on, and so next year that might change. But any time I've been in a high school classroom for any reason since I've been here, there's that the learning is held by both the students and the teacher. Like that's a constant feeling that I've never been in a classroom where it hasn't felt that way. That might be true from time to time, but that's a constant that's there. And I've also never found that a group of students are not eagerly interested in engaging with me about whatever it is, whether we ought to call a snow day tomorrow, activities today, whatever it is that I have on my mind. And so, and they are brutally honest with their perspectives. And so, so the things that you're talking about, I have felt over time, and I think are hallmarks of the way our high school feels as a learning environment. So it's not just, as to Steve's point, it's not just on that day because you were there. And we have done 2 of those this year. You know, we did one with Cornwall and Salisbury, and then the other one at Caitlin's gracious invitation, you know, at the high school. And so, you know, next year, if you would like, we'll go ahead and continue to arrange these, so that way you're really able to see what and feel what happens on the ground. Which sounds like mums might be a good place to begin in the fall. So yeah, good.
Can I just say thanks very much for joining us at the school. I'm really proud of the work that we do, and really love the people that I get to work with, and it was really fun. It was fun to share that with you. So thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, is there any more conversation on this topic? We'll move on then. So the next agenda item is the Cornwall wind turbine. And I think the way we will work through this is I can share with the board some of the work that has been going on. And, you know, Matt has been involved in this. Wendy, I also see some folks from Cornwall in the back of the room that we will probably bring into the conversation at some point. So at our last meeting, there was an issue raised about Cornwall windmill and the impact that some planned construction will have on lowering that windmill for maintenance. We ended up discussing the situation at an executive committee meeting that we held on April 29th, so 2 days after that meeting, to try to understand what actions we might be able to take to navigate the situation. As I understand it, the district owns the windmill. It was given to us as part of the merger process. The land below the windmill is town of Cornwall land. And then after the pavilion is built, that is being planned with the Cornwall Rec Department or Rec Association, I think it is. What happens is that windmill can't be lowered because that is where the pavilion will be located. And so that would mean there could potentially be more of an expense for the district to maintain that asset. And I can't remember exactly what Bruce said. I want to say $70 per month in electrical generation is kind of how that pencils out when you take into consideration everything. My understanding right now is the situation wasn't sorted out quick enough to avoid changing the construction schedule, but I think we still may need to figure out kind of what we want to do. We did hear from the Cornwall Select Board on May 1st, indicating that they had voted to indicate their strong support of ACSD removing the windmill at its earliest convenience. So, Jason, Mary, Heather, you both are on the executive committee. Is there anything else that I missed?
I think it's important that for board members to understand that the operation of the windmill is kind of governed by a sort of agreement, a license agreement between ACSD and the town. And the parameters of that specify that any removal or alteration of the windmill needs to be approved by the Select Board of Cornwall. So the board could not just act and do it without oversight and partnership with the Select Board. So that was an important bit of information that came out. So whatever we wanted to do, we couldn't do anything without their explicit approval. I'm happy to hear that they have taken a vote and a stance on what they would like to do. I do think the license also lays out a sort of time frame, and that there's, for me, is a little ambiguity about like if we decide we want to remove it. I'm not sure if there's parameters in the license agreement about how quickly we should do so. And the other thing that's important to note is that per the license agreement, we're supposed to, if we do disassemble it at the end of the windmill's life, we're supposed to return the property to its original state. And so that's another sort of point of negotiation, I guess, that could be worked out with the town. And I guess, yeah, it was important to learn the $70 per month, roughly, of electric generation net benefit to ACSD. And I guess the only other thing was the sort of where we are in the lifespan of the windmill. And I guess I'm just remembering like the bullet points from the minutes of the executive committee meeting, that the operation of the windmill, if it is to remain, and we need to maintain it, it will involve a crane, which is vastly more expensive than if we were to disassemble it now. So those are sort of the facts, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, Jason.
Does the decision on the May 1st decision by the Cornwall Select Board, is that enough for us to take action with, or?
I mean, I do you want me to go ahead and answer that?
Yeah, if you and Matt have any additional perspective to share.
I think the overarching thought, is that the select board has within their rights to provide us notice that they are revoking their license agreement, and we would have 90 days to remove the wind turbine at that time. They've not done that. They've just said, we would support you if you were to go ahead and take it down, right? So we're operating now from a standpoint of like, we're not demanding this, but we would be very supportive of it coming down. And so I think the assumption is that, if that board doesn't take action to just enable us to go ahead and take it down, that perhaps a license revocation might follow, and then that would set the clock so that we would have 90 days and we would need to remove it anyway. So I think if I'm understanding the lay of the land, we're just kind of chatting with each other about, yep, it would be good if you could take it down. That'd be nice. We'll move our construction window to make that a little bit easier, right? And so I think that's where we are. Matt's done a little bit of research into, the way that asset is currently valued in our audit that I think might be important for him to share, as well as the process we would have to go through to make our audit kind of whole as we keep moving forward, that you should just hear, I think. But other than that, I think that's the crux of it.
Thanks for doing most of the talking there.
Yeah.
It's a $48,000 asset on the books right now, so that's the book value. Then there's the sort of market value of used wind turbine equipment, which is not worth $48,000, nor is it worth that much to us when it's non-operational. So we have to conduct something called an impairment study that essentially shows that the value of it is what we would be passing off to the disassembly team for them to take it away and own the equipment. And so then it just gets passed off as a push on the books. No value leaving the district, no money exchanged. So
we may have a way to take it down for somebody who would just simply appreciate having it, so that it's not really a cost to the district, measurable cost to the district. Or we may not, and we're not sure what the costs are if we don't, but regardless of what the costs are, the town certainly could say, you need to take it down. So it isn't a question of whether it's coming down, probably, it's just really, are you really okay? Are you in the know, and are you okay with us proceeding, to accommodate the town's request?
And I don't know the details of the timing, but just to say, another key distinction between being told by the Cornwall Select Board we have 90 days to take it down and us agreeing to it now is the ability of the volunteers who've been leading a years-long effort to transform that part of Cornwall, and now to get many, many community members involved in erecting this pavilion, allowing that to move forward in a more timely manner as opposed to another 90 days if we were to just decide we wanted to be told.
Actually, if you'll permit me a one-sentence tangent, I took Theory of Knowledge in 1982, so I'm really glad that we have extended our construction window, but we really would like this to happen soon. I happen to be up at the site working on another project up there, and David Blittersdorf came up, and I was able to speak to him. It sounds like he has someone who is interested in the turbine, and they would be able to take it down quite quickly. So we are actually hoping that we don't have to push the timber frame raising out more than about a month. We're still trying to figure it out with the timber frame company, but if you're amenable to saying that we can do that, and if David is able to take it down, that would be our preferred timeline.
I don't think our insurance company would like it if anyone takes it down that doesn't meet certain parameters. So I would say we could chat about what those might be, and and make sure that whatever it is that happens.
I think David's would be taking it down. It was just that a friend of his would be taking it away after it's taken out.
Well, that's, in any case, I think we can work together to figure out the how.
Thank you. And I really appreciate, I know this, we kind of parachuted this in on you, and you've all been wonderful about jumping in on this on a very short timeline, so thank you.
It's okay.
And can I clarify, we've been on this project for 3.5 years, not one.
Gail has it.
Jamie.
Wait, what is the relation, what's the pavilion? Or what is the relationship of the new project you're talking about to the school? Or is there not?
There's no relation.
Okay, never mind, okay.
Only that where it's erected, correct me if I don't
Proximity.
have this, it ends up in the path of the laydown of the turbine.
There's a bit of confusion in that the property that the turbine is on and that the chorus site is on is town property. And not to get too much into the weeds here, when the turbine was erected, I think that the school thought that it was their property, which was before it became ACSD property, so nobody's fault here.
Jason.
Do we know how much it will cost to return the site to its original state?
No, nor do we know what exactly the select board would consider its original state or what's important about that. And
I
so-
believe other than taking it down, you will not incur any costs.
So we would certainly be ensuring that we met the obligation of the licensing agreement, you know, in that process, you know, but I don't anticipate that it would be anything that would be.
I mean, the license agreement is explicit.
Yes, and so
There's no ambiguity there.
based on, you know, Rafe's assessment, which agrees with Bruce's assessment, it does not seem to be something that would be.
Effectively, what will remain after it's taken down are some concrete pieces in the ground, which can either be covered up or removed, but that would be done as part of the site work for Cora, and it would not come back to the district.
But we will work with the select board to ensure that all of that is
Yes.
very clearly documented and outlined so that we're in good shape.
So.
And can I just say that property, that area is meant to be a garden. So we're digging it up anyway.
Mary Heather.
I'm just thinking about, so if the board decides to remove it, and I'm just wondering about the process that Bruce would need to follow to secure someone who's licensed and can, you know, remove it to the satisfaction of our insurance coverage. If the cost is such that we would need to bid or anything?
No.
It's definitely under that?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I mean, I can't imagine it's not. If it is, we would certainly come back to you, but I mean, I think if it is our recommendation that you go ahead and authorize the administration to remove the wind turbine, you know, as efficiently as possible, you know, and you know, we will do that in accordance with the administrative standards that the district quality standards actually outline, you know, that we follow. And if we run into any hiccups or any unforeseen challenges, then certainly we will come back to you if there's any problem, but we don't anticipate any, and we don't anticipate unusual burden on the part of the district in that process. You know, we imagine it might even be simple.
Then just to follow up, I mean, is there any reason that we wouldn't potentially take an action tonight?
Jess, I did see your hand, and I think Barb, I see a partial hand. We have this listed as a possible board action item.
Right.
So I think if that's the board's will that we take an action, then that's what we do, and if it's not, then we don't. So, Jess.
I was gonna make a motion
I'm so
that
sorry.
we
You do it.
that
Go, girl.
we put in motion the removal of this wind turbine and like for the administration to do all the things that need to be done in accordance with the agreement.
Authorize the administration to take the wind turbine down in accordance with the agreement.
Perfect.
Is that what you meant? Yeah.
All right, is there any further discussion on this motion? All right, well, then I think we will move to vote on the question. Steve and Laura, did you by any chance have any comments or questions or anything? I just want to make sure.
No, I'm good.
All right.
I don't have any questions either.
All right, just wanted to make sure. All right, well then we will go ahead and vote on the question. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. All right, motion is approved.
Great. I just want to say how much we appreciated on the administrative side, just being able to look into the matter before the board, right, took any further action after our last meeting, just because we could work carefully together, determine, all right, what is possible, what's important. You know, Matt was able to call the bond bank. Is there a significant change for us and the Bank of Middlebury if we're losing assets? You know, right? They're just steps we follow to make sure that those things are okay, so that when we come, like tonight, we can say with confidence, we've looked under every rock we can and we're okay. You know, so we just appreciate a little bit of that extra time. And you know, certainly the town's interest in the project and willingness to work it through with us in a way that, you know, is going to lead us, I think, to a good result. And we will certainly get on it as soon as possible. And so Matt and Bruce will be the contact folks, you know, that can ensure that this is done efficiently.
Great. Thank you.
You can count on that.
And can I say, as the chairperson who had this ridiculous idea of just putting pickleball courts in Cornwall, that this, I mean, it makes me want to tear up, because you are our last hoop. And if any of you want to help put up that pavilion with us, we will get that date to you soon. Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, well, with that, that brings us to our second public comment period of the evening. If folks would like to make public comment, we will start in the room. I will remind everyone there's a 3-minute time limit on public comments. Please indicate by raising your hand. We'll start in the room and then go online. Yes.
I don't know if you can tell us, Wendy, but on C30, can you give us town by town, how many people per town?
We have that data. And it's not part of tonight, but it's easy to provide.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd be curious on what that is.
Yeah.
And also, when it came, we used to have big sister, big brother clubs. Do we still do that?
In some ways, but not the way it used to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When that was, I just talked about like coming together, the college piece. I was like, well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to have one from the high school here when I was in elementary school in Shoreham.
Yeah, there was a time when that was a very big, you know, kind of a very structured approach, and so it's not quite like that now, but it's an interesting thought.
There is one run through the college. If you email me, I can send you the info.
Community friends?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Did you want to, is there further
That was
comment?
it, those are my two.
All right. Is there other public comments in the room? All right, we'll go online. Any folks online that would like to make a public comment? All right, seeing none, the last call for public comment. We will close public comment then. All right, so next on our agenda is an executive session. Jason.
I move to enter executive session for purposes of negotiating a real estate agreement for the Ripton School transfer. I'd like to invite Superintendent Baker, Matt Franti, and legal counsel Evan Henderson to the executive session.
All right, is there any discussion on
Sorry, this is per 1 VSA 313A2.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion on this topic?
Do we need to do that okay, not in this case, right? The two
There's no final motion.
Okay.
All right, well, then we'll vote on the question. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. All right, the motion is approved and we will go into executive session.